Hi, and welcome to the New Property Show. I'm Steve McMenamin. In this show, we'll be joined by Intaj from Countryland. He'll be talking to us about developments and what developers are doing for the community. Goro will be discussing NDIS properties and how to maximise the yield out of your rental income. And Gary Brown will be joining us for our regular segment. And we'll be finishing up with our panel. Intaj from Countryland Australia, thank you for coming on the show. Amir from Gambit Property, also appreciate you being on here. You're a real estate specialist, you're a developer. Great to have you both on the show.
Thank you, Steve.
I'm going to be posing questions to both of you today. Feel free to just jump in any way you want. I guess you guys feeling the pinch at the moment. Rate rises, talks of recession, land falling over sometimes, prices skyrocketing, builder prices skyrocketing, lots of buyer inquiry, lots of seller inquiry. Let's talk to that. What's affecting your market at the moment?
Oh, look, interest rate rising is, I think, definitely a worry for the market. And there are some funders anyway, they're not comfortable because the interest rate is, God knows, this is every month is coming up. So I think, in my view, that now the first home buyers, it's making it difficult for first home buyers, and some people pay 5%, some people pay 10%. I always encourage people to pay 10% so you know that you have enough equity and you're not relying on other source of income. So 10% would be good. In relations to the banks, I think banks are now becoming a lot more complex compared to previously. So definitely interest rise is affecting everyone, including the real estate, including land developers. But at some point of time, we have to stop this rate rising and make the market stable. At the moment, it's not stable. There's a bit of an unfair, the talks going in the market. There's a bit of a fear saying that, once it is going to be stopped and what's going to happen in next year and this year.
As a developer, I guess you guys are typically dealing in the millions of dollars. Do you feel it a lot more the same as a mum and dad? Is it just sort of blown out of proportion? Is that encouraging you to buy more projects, or you're slowing down at the moment?
Well, I would definitely see that anyway. There are farmers, because we buy land from the farmers or existing, the people who are holding the land. So definitely there's a price has gone moderate, so they're going to come down. They're not asking for too much, but definitely is a time now we can negotiate with a longer settlement. So it's 3 to 4 year settlement would be good. Yeah, definitely the bank and private funders are feeling a bit of uncomfortable because they believe that now they don't know when the market's going to be on a track, and that means this is more hard to get a funding. And if that continue, it will build up a more pressure on any housing. So I'll definitely say that this is affecting at the moment.
What do you feel, Amir?
I think when interest rates rise, and the current situation is, the word comes, it's uncertainty, Steve. Everybody, buyers, even developers for us, we are very uncertain about what we're buying, what we're selling. I mean, as a real estate, people come with a very uncertain mind to buy or even sell. And for a developer as well, for Countryland Australia, to buy any project, it's not very certain what they're looking for, what they're buying. We're all looking for a good deal. But at the moment, interest rate rise is impacting the borrowing capacity. They can't borrow much. As Intaj said, I very agreed to it. Rather than we encourage buyers to pay 5% deposit, we should encourage them to pay 10% deposit. But that way, when it comes to settlement, they have more equity, they have less to borrow, because the borrowing capacity is which is impacting big time. Other than that, repayments and all, look, for experienced investors, for people who know are already in the market, for them, yes, it is a worry. The interest rate going up, repayments going up. But for the first home buyers, for the new investors, that's the biggest worry. And I was thinking, we discuss these things a lot of time, and I was discussing this, why not for first home buyers, government give stamp duty, zero stamp duty. Why not bank look at it and talk with the government and give them some sort of lower interest rate? And that's what they're looking for. They want to enter into the market. Once they are in there, obviously once they got comfortable in a year or 2 year, like you give investors for 1 year, 2 year interest only, give them some sort of deal for first home buyers as well. That will help market to go along nicely.
Do you think too maybe it's time to actually innovate a new change? For example, there's a lot of grants out there for first home buyers, but we meet a lot of people nowadays that have got together, they've taken advantage of the grant, they've split up. Yeah. Only one person's really utilised the grant. there should be an opportunity, I believe, for second and third home buyers to re-enter the market, because it's actually quite hard if you've been through, you've bought and sold, you've cashed out. What about innovative products there? Do you think there could be a stamp duty concession possibly for investors, or should something else be sort of drawn up to help incentivise sophisticated investors to purchase more stock?
Well, can I say that not many people knows that now when the land subdivision kicks in your area, the land developer have to pay a lot of levies and taxes. So these things people don't talk openly, and I think including the open space levy, there is a gag, there's so many levies kicks in. I think what government need to do if they really want to sort out this problem, they need to make a less stamp duties and encourage people to buy, but also give some incentives as they've been before, $35,000 or $25,000. That's the only way. Otherwise, it's very difficult for first home buyers to afford a home, to buy a home. It's going to be always a dream where you want to chase it. It's not going to be complete. So I think it's important that the government should choose and pick a pockets. And some of the pockets, okay, well, that's where infrastructure is. Let's give a grant for that area. That area didn't have a infrastructure, give a more grant. I think it should be more flexible, more subjective. That way we can encourage more people to save and have them. But I think social housing is a good concept. There's a number of concepts. So I think government need to look at, how they can support first home buyers and also the investors. Well, at the moment, look at it now. If you're an investor, you're paying lots of land taxes. Now, you might have your lot, you haven't utilized it because you do not have money, and you want to actually contribute. You're creating a job, you're creating a work in the area, but if you're not doing anything, you're paying a massive land tax. So this land tax things need to be sorted out, and that can help the land developers and also builders. But definitely the builders are at the moment, as you know, every week someone's going out off the hook. So I think I would say that that now the pricing for the building need to be readjusted, and it will bring the market more.
I've heard the pricing's actually stabilised at the moment too. So hopefully there's no more increases in the building costs, and we could hopefully be able to renegotiate. Sometimes when you're hitting the peak, on the other side of rate rises is a rate decrease. Rates should hopefully come down. Building prices may come back down again. There might be some business being bought by builders as well to, I guess, stimulate the market. I guess my question to you, Amir, would be, what about affordability? Like, what are people doing to create more affordability? Are they buying smaller land now? Are they moving into townhouses? What are you seeing in the real estate market?
Yeah, I think, look, a lot of people, obviously, because of this COVID situation we've gone past, obviously we well and truly gone past that COVID situation, but if we still see the side effect and follow-up effect of COVID, what's happening is because of this COVID time, people are able to work from home, all these things, so people are going away, far away. They don't have to be city, they don't have to be close to office, so they can afford to buy where they can buy. You don't have to live in city or pay a premium price, so they can go somewhere where they can afford. And obviously, yes, a smaller house is in trend at the moment because of the affordability clearly. And from developer point of view, I want to add this one point what Intaj said is, look, there is a lot of cost associated. Look, interest rate increasing means the lot of other cost associated to the land development is gone up as well, and holding cost gone up as well. Obviously, interest rate, as a developer, we are getting a loan as well. So as a land developer, your cost of holding and approval waiting, all these things gone up as well, Steve. About the question we discussed about the innovative products for obviously we all talk about first home buyers. Yes, first home buyer has to be looked after. We should talk about this. Government do a lot of things for first home buyers. But what about those investors who got a home but they won't get into the investment market? First time investor or second time investor, we should do something for that. As Intaj little bit touched on that about the land tax, stamp duty. We have to do something for that as well. Some sort of stamp duty reduction for time investor
or land tax for first home buyers where the government actually backs the property. You could almost create a similar scheme then, I guess, for investors. So you do the purchase, might be 5% deposit. Government possibly could hold 15% of that property. And I know we're going into dangerous territory there. But actually hold that property there and actually create momentum, which therefore creates jobs, and of course infrastructure. gets the projects delivered sooner and quicker. Thank you guys for being on the New Property Show. You guys have been a lot of fun, and look forward to seeing you in another episode.
On today's segment, we're going to go through how to buy a property under an individual name or a partnership, and what's the pros and cons of doing so. So I think it's an amazing time right now to buy an investment property because house prices have come down a lot. This has provided a great opportunity for investors to get into the property market. The Hatchaway definition of investment property is one where you buy a property for the sole purpose for investment purposes, and that property can cover all of its expenses, including the loan repayments. It is an amazing time to buy an investment property because history teaches us a lot about properties. If you look back at 1970, average house price in Melbourne was $12,800, and by 1990 that has risen to $184,000. Likewise, back in 1970, interest rates were 5 to 7%, and by 1990 that increased to 17 to 19%. I can't predict the future, but I do know that I want to get the investment property structured correctly, because if there is a massive inflationary period, like we've seen in the past, then I want to make sure that I'm paying the least amount of tax as possible. With that in mind, when we're looking at buying an investment property, we've got to make the decision between doing it under an individual name or in a partnership with multiple people, or other structures like trust, company and super fund. But for this segment, we're going to be talking about individuals and partnerships. So we have two real main types of investment properties. We have cash flow positive ones and we have negatively geared ones. A cash flow positive property is one that the rental income exceeds that of their rental expenses. And with that being the case, it will normally have a tax liability at the end of the year. Where a negatively geared property is one where the expenses exceed that of its income, and therefore generate a tax loss, which will generally give us a tax refund if we own it under an individual or partnership structure. Because of this, we want to be very careful about what are the reasons why we buy an investment property and then the structure, because we don't want to buy the wrong type of property under the wrong structure. So for all you mum and dads out there that are looking at investment properties and looking at what structure is right for you, we want to look at, is it going to be cash flow positive? And if it is, then maybe under your individual name isn't the right option. Or is it going to be negatively geared and maybe under your individual name could be the right option? Because of this, we want to always look for advice, because 9 times out of 10, people come to accountants after they've purchased the property and we find that it's already too late to correct the mistake. Speak to your advisor, reach out and look, but for a negatively geared property, you might find it best to be under a personal name. Over the coming series, we'll be talking about structures like trusts, companies and super funds, and when it's the right time to buy a property under those structures.
Joined here by Goro from 10 Properties 10 Years. You've been on the New Property Show, and welcome back to Season 2. Today's topic, NDIS properties. For our mums and dads out there as investors, what does NDIS stand for?
Thanks for that, Steve. Pleasure to be back as well. For the mums and dads out there, NDIS stands for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Perfect. So with that said, what is an NDIS property? There's a couple of forms of different NDIS properties, and why is it a good investment?
So I want to clarify, and the great questions. NDIS investing typically belongs in the category called specialist disability accommodation. There's currently $700 million a year allocated to it, and that grows every year. According to my research, only about 350 or 400 million of that is used, and it's significantly cheaper for the government effectively to help pay for the lease for someone with a disability living in a specialist house rather than having it in the hospital. For example, the hospital system for people that shouldn't be there costs us taxpayers $2 billion a year.
Phenomenal.
Right, so 700 billion is cheaper than 2 billion, right? 2 billion, yeah. And so there's different forms of investing in NDIS. There's the right way and the not so right way. And I'm biased because I've been doing this for the last 7 years. And when we started, we're kind of doing what I'm seeing other property people do now and make the same mistakes. And so my big mission at the moment is to help mum and dad investors really invest in NDIS the right way, because there's the right ethical way that creates a long-term profit for everyone, and there's a way that is getting pushed out there by marketers, for example, insurance, where you can have, for example, rental guarantees and things like that. I'm seeing some crazy stuff out there in the market, which in the long term is going to do nothing but burn the mum and dad investors out there.
What can really go wrong with that? Let's say, for example, you've been doing it for 7 years now. So you've done the research, you help secure the tenants.
Yes.
You build the properties to the right spec, so low and high disability. What can go wrong? Like at the end of the day, what about if you build a house and you can't get a tenant?
Which is actually a really common problem. So industry vacancy rate, according to my latest research, is sitting around 20%. In areas like Southeast Queensland, industry vacancy rates there are 38% plus. And the reason why is that there's always a supply and a demand issue, right? There is not an unlimited demand. So specialist disability accommodation only refers to 6% of people on the NDIS, which we're talking roughly between 22 and 25,000 people across all of Australia, across 4 separate categories of investing in NDIS. So the market is limited. The only way to succeed is understand who your SDA provider is. And I'm lucky when we started, I partnered up with a friend of mine who worked in the disability sector, and we started, a SDA provider company, which is now the largest provider in Victoria. And as part of that, we manage 60 houses. So it's not a huge scheme, but if done right, it can be very profitable. I talk about the things that can go wrong. So I'm seeing people out there guaranteeing, for example, that you could, we'll add the care provision of the house with the SDA part of the house and we'll do a 60-40 split, and that's called a rental guarantee. Unfortunately, there's quite a few things wrong with that. I'll start talking about the general things that are wrong with guarantees in the real estate industry. Typically, the first thing that's wrong with any sort of guarantee in the real estate industry is someone's paying for the guarantee, right? Typically, what happens is that the price of real estate gets loaded up, and we see this in apartments. Almost never in house and land, but almost every single time I see this in apartments, where apartments loaded up by 50, 100,000, and that pays for the rental guarantee. And we're seeing something similar happen in the NDI space as a first challenge. The next challenge we see, where we've, the person said that, oh, you can go off and be your own SDA provider, right? That's another way they say, oh, you can earn X amount of income by being your own provider. That's probably, I'll give you my experience. Owning a provider company is probably one of the hardest experiences in my life. And, between Dan and I, we've got over 37 properties. So imagine that as a magnitude of, difficulty. And people with disabilities only trust people with disabilities. So I have to hire a team of people with disabilities in order for them to find the right tenants for the houses. Then the final thing is, according to an email that got sent out in early March, late February, from the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission, the email clearly stated there is in no grey area allowed to be a financial relationship between the care provider and the housing provider.
It's a very important point.
Yes.
Yes.
And a lot of the things where we're saying, oh, you can do a profit share between the care provider and the housing provider, all of a sudden, guess what? That's a financial relationship, right? And so that type of investing is now deemed in no grey area illegal, right?
So I've heard then there's obviously a significant amount of admin that's involved. If somebody was to utilise your services or similar to that, what are the advantages of investing in NDIS? So typically that's going to be high rental returns, secure long-term tenant if done correctly. Is an ability to, 10 properties, 10 years, can you accumulate wealth quite quickly?
Yes, so one of my favourite quotes that I repeat almost on a weekly basis is, SDA can be a highly over-engineered and overpriced investment if done with the wrong intent, which is greed. However, it can also be one of the quickest paths to financial freedom if done with the right intent and, more importantly, the right team.
Beautiful.
Right? So I was recently featured on news.com.au, and one of my key ways of, earning a multi-six-figure passive income from my portfolio was the NDIS investing and getting into it early. And I really still believe in my heart, if you do it right, it's probably one of the most lucrative parts to cash flow, right, as opposed to equity growth. So as we go on from there, one thing that we do is, because I own the agency, it's really important whoever you get in bed with for an NDIS organisation, as a mum and dad investor, you understand that you're getting into bed with them for 20 years. So date first before marrying, right?
Beautiful.
Find out who you're dealing with. Find out their what their respect is in the disability industry, what their accolades are. We're, for example, the only SDA organisation that's been publicly supported by Bill Shorten and his shadow offsider Michael Sukkar.
Awesome. So it actually, not only are you getting an income, but you're giving back to the community as well, which obviously is helping you serve people for up to 20 years. Last thing to touch on would be getting loans for these style of properties. So it's not for the faint-hearted. I wouldn't recommend it normally in my strategy to begin with, but after 2 or 3 properties, I think it's a very aggressive strategy for cash flow. But what loopholes or what do you need to jump through to get finance approved for an NDIS property?
Yes, well, I'll harken back to, with my pre-qualifier, saying a correctly built NDIS property, because there's a lot of incorrect stuff out there where people are just going, hey, look, let me just have a look at the build designs, here's the requirements, tick, 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 that's an NDIS house. Just because it's an NDIS house doesn't mean it's functional for someone with a disability. Just because the government says it's okay doesn't mean someone actually wants to live in it, right? And with such a small amount of tenants, we need to make sure the house is built correctly. So going back to the loan question, we have in our what we do a 2-step process, and I'll start with the most complex one, which is the highest yielding product. So we have a product that ranges between 1 to 1.2 million house and land, that gets up to $120,000 income a year after management fees, which is quite large. But then you have to have either extra deposit available, or we have to use a specialist lender that does a commercial valuation of the property, because in essence, it's a commercial property from a rental perspective. Interest rates are typically a little bit higher for the commercial valuation, and obviously you need to pay upfront for those valuations. So definitely not for a first-time investor, as you mentioned, 3rd or 4th time. In very similar vein, in the lower end properties, we've figured out the right mix of extra additions versus the right type of tenant to put in. So for, say, a $750,000 purchase, we can get $60,000 a year rent, which is still quite a big number. We're talking 8% yields in Melbourne, right? And we are finding that 80% of valuations are coming in with a regular lender on the dollar with that particular property.
Excellent, because there's sometimes a lot of talk around these properties being inflated, additional fees going outside, which hurt valuations. It's so important in this market that mums and dads are most protected. That's obviously the point of the show, is making sure our buyers are buying at the right price, and obviously that's why we partner and interview people like yourself.
Yes.
I'd like to hear from you one tip.
Yes.
Wealth creation. What would you say to a young 18 to 25-year-old out there? What do they need to do next?
I learned this lesson from my dad very early on, and I was blessed to I was blessed to be able to go to property events with him when I was 16, and I learned this lesson very early. It doesn't matter if the property's $5,000 or $10,000 more than what you originally wanted to purchase for, because honestly, that $5,000 or $10,000 will get absorbed within a period of 6 months. So if you're tossing up as a young investor, whether, hey, should I spend $5,000 or $10,000 more on a newer house versus, purchase an older property? Buy the newer one.
Perfect. Great to have you on again, Gaurav. Been a lot of fun. Look forward to exploring wealth creation, NDIS properties, and of course, some of your tips to success. Look forward to having you back on the New Property Show.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
This segment here is going to be about the hidden building costs, something I'm really passionate about, one of the reasons I actually entered the industry. What are people not including when they're shopping for a brand new home? They've purchased the land. What are we missing as a consumer? What's the questions we should ask? And what do you feel is missing?
Got to be number one complaint that I hear from clients is they don't realise landscaping's not involved, which for me, building a house, landscaping shouldn't be involved. But then they think that they can do it for like, a couple $1,000, and then it's some grass that's overgrown for 10 years. But I think that's one of the hidden costs of building a new home, whether it's an investment property or a house to live in, is just taking into consideration that you're going to have to put some budget towards landscaping because you want it to look nice.
Okay.
I think I add this to, I agree with what Gary said, but there is something called in the market called turnkey, which includes blinds and curtains or whatever, landscaping, backyard, front yard, and letterbox and all that. I think that's a hidden cost. Normally, if you buy a house, if you buy a as it is house, what builders give you, and you do that turnkey things like landscaping, fencing, and letterbox or toilet rolls, all these things, small things. What they're saying, this thing they charge you 20,000. It's turnkey now, but you're paying 20,000 extra. So that's the biggest hidden cost. You better get off the home like this, and you go talk to your own friend, tradie, somebody can do it in a better cost, and you save quite a good money in there. That's a good hidden cost. And other than that, a stone bench top, all these things become standard now. If somebody is saying, oh, you have 40 mm stone bench top, don't go for it. Just go for your instinct, what you want, what you feel and look, and then that's sort of hidden cost you can avoid.
What about you, Gaurav?
I think what I would say that now that also when you sign a contract with the builder, you've got to be careful what you're signing it. And they ask you to sign a contract for 1 year. And you expect the story, oh, well, by the way, very quick, we'll finish 6-7 months, but it'll take you, they said 1 year. So you've got to be careful with the contractor. That's kind of they do a trick. Site cost is another thing. So they find out any rock, especially like being in
rock bang is a lot of rocks.
Yeah. So the idea is now, so make sure that now you have a price lock to it, just not like, oh, by the way, it's a $50 per cubic meter, things like that. And these things, you take a time, do Google research. Another thing is now, when they start, you make sure you're holding them for accountability, because I hear stories, they finish my hour, or they make 7 homes for our own product. And one of them, I'm waiting 4 months, and each time builder says, I have a shortage of wood.
Yeah.
Timber. I say, hang on a second, but everyone's got timber's been a problem, we sold it already. No, but we have supplier. I say, you tell me, I'll get you timber for you. No, we have a special supplier, that supplier have this. So I think, personally, I don't believe the story, timber cannot be out so for 4 months. But because then I said, okay, I'm upset, I'm gonna take my contract, I'm gonna cancel. Oh, by the way, if we still are in 365 days. So you can't cancel it technically. If you cancel it, you're up for the cost.
Yeah.
So somehow I think what I realize now that you have to make sure that now you keep chasing and monitoring your builder. So make sure he deliver on time, and anything. So you just sort of be honest, because that now I'm lucky now I'm not paying much interest. But if it will be a normal first home family, well, you got to go 1 year now. You budgeted for 6 months.
It's a massive cost.
Yeah.
And now going for 1 year, just not for the paying interest on the property you settled. What about property you're living? If you're renting a disaster, you pay here and you pay there too. You're paying two rates now almost.
Yep.
So ideally you need a short build time that's guaranteed, like a 210 business days or 250 build days.
Correct.
Some of the contracts do have 365 in there,
Way back.
and that's 100%, but that can be dictated by the price, so they can actually push the days out. And then separate to that, one of the questions you'd also ask would be, how long until I get a permit and then a site start? Because that's your holding
That's a
cost
hidden
as
cost
well.
as well.
And touching on the land in Taj would be different soil classifications. So basically, in terms of, you may need to peer slabs. So always prior to buying land, get a few prices and fixed price if you can on the soil classification and site works. Have you seen anything where that's actually blown out by maybe $100,000, for example?
Oh, look, the site cost is I think, is unseen, and they builder says this thing, when they find a rock, is I find a gold. Because now
It's more money for them. That's
$50 per square meter kicks in, per cubic meter kicks in, and you can imagine when you keep digging in. Like I had one of my property, was a building currently in the Daramit Road, and we had a contract, $85,000 contract anyway, and I can tell you that now, since it's mine private, we have to spend $300,000 on a site cut.
it.
So
And I said, well, how come that this is too big, too much variation? What kind of variation is 85 to not to 300? He said, no, we didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So I think the engineering report was there. So these things can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen to me, but I think it's important that.
And plus build time is the biggest hidden cost. If you have to time efficient, build timing is the biggest hidden cost. Go, Gaurav.
Well, I think, taking in everyone's opinion here as well, my opinion is owning multiple properties, I want things done easier for me. So I'm kind of a little bit of a fan of a fixed price turnkey from a high quality builder. That's my prerequisite. If it's just a builder like I'm not going to name volume builders, but we all know there's multiple volume builders out there, even masquerading under different names, who do things like, here we have a fixed price quote for for site works, and all of a sudden that fixed price quote goes magically a lot higher. But a good quality builder will include the extra site cost and take it on the cheap.
We're very important now. You just brought this discussion. I would say that now I think people should start in Australia thinking cost plus contract. Because you know that if any cost goes up and down, you pay it. So cost plus contract should be encouraged, and site cost, which is now a volume builders, they're just going out and selling and numbers, and then they're going out of business. Why would you go and sign a 1,000 jobs when you have an excuse is sorry we're short of labor? Well, you already knew.
And material, very important. Short of material.
You can't do 1,000 homes in a year, but you projected. You're saying you'll go get the numbers and sell. People get incentives, and now it become disaster for those ones who have signed up with you. They're stuck 1 year. The paying interest, actually, you are actually becoming vulnerable to those families, those who have trusted you.
The biggest challenge with the cost plus contracts, and my background is finance, I've been 15 years in the finance industry, especially when the loan, a lot of first-time investors are close to the edge when it comes to investing. Even if they have a bit of a buffer, usually deposits are going to be the biggest challenge for
finance become a little bit issue. You're right, Gaurav. Finance become a little bit issue when you do fix. But I think look, there is a way. Have to be some sort of control on the builders, because now interest rate going up, this going up, cost of everything going up, and we had the time where builder is saying material is the biggest shortage, and because of the material shortage we are getting this extra cost. What happened is when they signed the contract 2 years back, the cost of thing was different. Now it's different. Now a lot of builders going under as well because of that, because the cost gone up and their margins gone down. So some of the big builders take that hit, but a lot of builders can't take that hit. It's like a situation where everybody into a situation where what to do. Look, the only thing is you have to do the contract negotiation right, contract right, have the right information in front of you when you make the decision. Information is the key. That's the knowledge.
I might just say, because we have to wrap this segment up in a moment, but I think one of the things that probably need to be introduced nowadays would be typically you do house land deposit, then through to contract, colour gallery and doing that. Normally, at the end of the day, you use a conveyancer or a solicitor just to settle the land, but you almost need contract specialists now to go through a contract. I would recommend probably one of the things we haven't touched on but we can't touch on today would be colour gallery. Because with a builder's margin at 20 to 25% inflated on top of everything, if you're spending 50 grand, you're paying 65. So what could happen there is I'd recommend possibly to most purchasers out there now is find your top 3 builders, go through, get your quotes, almost go through to, as I said, colour gallery selection, get a fixed price contract at that point, and then have that reviewed. After that, sign the contract. You've been educated, you've been warned, and then you need to just go through it. And of course, a good solicitor, a good conveyancer is going to know what's happening in that market because they're going to see those contracts as well. So whether that's a HIA contract or a master builder or an independent contract out there as well, I think there's a lot of topics there, but I think at the moment clients really should be a bit more careful. So guys, want to thank you for this segment. Great one, and look forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thank you all.
That's all for this week, and thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week.